Hello and welcome back to an episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me, Richa Kaul. She is the founder and CEO of Compliance. I'm very, humbled. I'm very honored to have you with me here today, Richa. We're gonna talk about, as people can imagine from the name, about compliance, but of course, from enterprise perspective, we're gonna talk about data risk. We're gonna talk also about the mix with AI in this era. And as my audience knows, I don't like to steal much from my guests' time. So, Richard, tell us a little bit more about you, your journey, and how did you start compliance? And then we can start the conversation from there. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mehmet. Thank you so much for having me on the show today. What can I say? I guess from a professional perspective, I started my career more on the regulation side of the house. I worked in public sector, first at McKinsey and then for the government in the state of Virginia in the US. And I really focused on how to spur innovation and grow the tech sector by balancing regulation and policies with investments and incentives in the growth of tech. And so I kind of, came at this more from the regulation side of governance, risk, and compliance. And so now I'm obviously kind of bridging the gap on the other end, being part of the tech sector that needs to innovate and also respect certain data privacy and security regulations while we do so. From a personal perspective, though, which I think is more interesting, I am a huge data privacy nut. And that's actually why I started compliance with a Y. So I'm a bit obsessed with making sure that my data, my personal data, is not being used in, unnecessary ways by whether it be governments or software that I put my data into. And I realized do you remember the Equifax breach that happened way back? I think it was 2017, 2018.
Yeah,
It was
around
kind of
that
a
time.
around that it was kind of a turning point for me personally because I basically realized that, no matter how much we as individuals really put in privacy configurations and security at the individual level, at the end of the day, it is about the enterprises who we trust with our data. They are really the folks who determine whether our data is safe or not. And it kind of led me down this path of saying, how do I help make sure that enterprises are the most secure? And that brought us to Compliance with the Y, which is an entirely security GRC focused company. We help the largest companies around the world really manage all of their security compliance, their potential risks, their third party risks, and so on.
Great. And thank you again, Richa, for being here with me today. It's an interesting story, and thank you for sharing this, like why you decide to this, because, this is my traditional first question, but how your experience, on the other side of the table shaped also the way you wanted. I'm sure like you have a CTO and you have like a team with you,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm sure, like all this background and, you worked for McKinsey also as well, how this shaped your vision, let's say, for the company, and how did you wanted to, I would say, let enterprises understand the importance of compliance. And I'm with you 100% because also I'm a big fan of compliance and regulations in the what you are offering.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking that question because I so rarely get to talk about some of the links from my past life into what we do now. I think the overarching point that I would make, Mehmet, is that it's it's important to make it easy for businesses to be compliant. Because if we put up a bunch of regulation and then it's not easy to be compliant, it's not going to make business sense for those companies to actually do more than check the box and to actually, be secure and not just be able to, check off the list and say, yep, we're secure. And so everything we do at our company is about how do we make it easy for an enterprise to be secure. And going back to why that links, in the vision and my experiences, maybe I'll give you a quick anecdote. When I was working for the state of Virginia, I was sitting on a committee that determined drone privacy regulation. So
Hmm.
again, thinking about this, right? Like the drone industry was taking off at the time; it was in its nascency, and it started to raise privacy questions. If you're flying a drone above a neighborhood and you're looking down on people's backyards, what if you see them in position like they didn't want to be seen in? Right? It's their personal space; it's their private property. So, how do you start to create privacy regulations for drone usage? And then we would go back to these drone companies in the state and talked to them about that. And what it showed me was just this balance, this delicate balance that needs to exist between the privacy and security regulations that benefit everyday people and the the burden on the company, and that starts to open the question of, okay, well, if we want those types of protections for everyday people and for consumers, then the answer is not to get rid of them. The answer is to make it easy to comply with them. And that is literally the vision and the basis for compliance with the why, as we call it,
Mhm.
the name of the company, because it's the what is the why behind compliance? It's to make it, it's to protect consumers and make it easy for companies to do so. So that's the kind of the story in a nutshell.
Great. You mentioned s- an important event, in my opinion, which is the Equifax event. Of course, we can go open and search plenty of other,
Mhm.
data leaks that happened, and we discover, what happened afterwards. um I work with, as an IT guy back in the days, and we used to take care of cybersecurity. And of course, in cybersecurity, data governance and privacy is an important factor in this. Later on, I work with different vendors as well. Now, and even after I left there and I started, for the past 3 years, talking to, founders and, executives like yourself, Richa, we always talked about how still somehow governance, risk, and compliance is seen as a cost center, similar to anything related to cybersecurity or technology, right? So it's a fact. Now, with the entrance of AI and generative AI and everything, so now I would say the formula started to change. So, in your opinion, how enterprises in the AI era can think about having this governance, risk, and compliance as an asset rather than just, oh, we need to pay this and we just need to pay someone to come and audit us and show that we are compliant, rather than that, like, think in a way that, no, actually this would help our business to maybe generate more money. Like, I like to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, thank you. Top line is that AI has brought GRC to the boardroom front and center. And thank goodness for that, to be honest. Right now, what's happening is that AI is something that is so easy for people to understand the risks about that all of a sudden, I think the collective fluency in the language of risk has increased dramatically in the last, even just 6 months. Why is that? Because I think we all intuitively understand that when we're putting all this information into, AI tools, what it's doing with them, we all very implicitly understand, oh shoot, this is a lot of risk that's being posed. And that's the first time that's really happened. I think we all use software all the time and we don't necessarily link directly in a layman's mind to all the risks that are being posed with the data that we're putting into a software. Much of it is the same, by the way. But I think that the intelligence of AI really brings that to the forefront. And I think what that does is it starts to make it easier for GRC leaders and security leaders to go into boardrooms and say, look, this is the business cost of not focusing on security compliance. This is the business cost of doing nothing. This is the quantified risks that you can, actually tangibly see, hear, understand. And this is the risk of actually being proactive about it. This is the risk of, this is the probability times impact risk of doing nothing about it. Okay, now people start to engage with that a little bit more deeply. And especially if you have good tooling, like we offer, that those types of quantifications become automated and become informed by what's happening in the market and in peers and so on. And you can start to have that conversation with a level of specificity to an audience that actually seems to understand it more than we've ever had before. And that's just not even putting aside that, that's not even talking about the fact that, AI security, AI governance is bringing those other elements to the boardroom as well. So we're hearing so much from our clients right now about how they can use and speak about the tools that we offer in their board meetings. I think it's a really exciting change.
It is definitely an exciting change. Now, you positioned the company compliance as an AI native GRC platform, right? Not just like set of AI features. Now, I'm gonna ask you maybe, and sorry for doing this sometime with my guests. Like, I don't intend to make the question harder or make it loaded, but how that, you know, work in not on a technical level, but what distinct, I would say, you're offering from what's around there, because GRC has been with us for a long time, knowing that, Richa, and I have seen, and I always like, the same way you said, like, you are nuts about compliance, I'm also nuts about people who still do things manually as well. Now, I'm sure you see it also, even in probably like, I would not say Fortune 500, but I would say like big enterprises, because I've seen it myself where everything is still manual. So how AI can help here, and how you differentiate yourself in the marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, I mean, it's funny because I think sometimes folks say that AI feels, um, like, oh, okay, enterprise doing things manually. How can they jump to AI? And I almost find that to be, an inaccurate premise because, AI is actually easier for them to jump to than the integrations that have been kind of the norm of the last few years, right? Like we've talked about, kind of went through the manual phase and then to automation and then to AI automation and then to agentic AI. Those are kind of the steps that I see. And people think about it as, how can you get to agentic if you haven't gone through the steps? But it's the automation that's hardest for some of these enterprises because their tech stacks are old and it's difficult to integrate with those and all of that. And so they kind of gotten stuck a little bit on some of that automation. But AI allows them to leapfrog that, because AI is less restricted by preset API points and so on. And so you kind of get like an effect of saying, okay, well, with the data that we have access to in a much more open way we've ever had before, how do we monitor compliance? How do we actually do some of this work that replaces some of the really manual administrative work that GRC folks do and also expands visibility and expands control beyond what a human could ever do? And pairing those two things together. And from our perspective, we're so unique in the market because we've actually cracked this. Like we have been working on agents since 2023, since we first started as a company. And that seems crazy. And we didn't have the word agent to describe it then.
Mhm.
We didn't know what to call it. It's funny, like we released our first agent in 2023, but we called it a feature because we didn't have the word agent. And so while other folks are releasing their first agents, we're working on the orchestration layer for agents and GRC for enterprise. And so it's a very different conversation. Like we have 18 agents on our platform today. Our competitors have one or two. And we're having a completely different conversation than they are. And so I think clients really see that. They feel that and they feel comforted that we've been, deploying AI for Fortune 500 companies for 3 years now.
Cool. Now, Rich, I'm happy you brought the discussion to the agentic AI and agents. It's,
Yeah.
in my opinion, 2026, since the start, it showed that it's the year of AI agents, with no doubt. Like this, at least me as someone who's been around for a long time, I see it, and it's gonna like grow more and more, because every single founder, even like established companies I talk to, they are going this direction now. Do you see agents have full autonomy in operating GRC? Why I'm asking you this question?
Yeah.
Because also, like, people who are building in different spaces, like I've talked to people building in travel tech, I spoke with people building in like co-working spaces technologies, and so on and so on. I can give you a bunch of examples. So always when we talked about the agents, we said like we need to have the human in the loop. And very interestingly, 3 weeks ago, but the episode is released now, I spoke with Betsy Atkins, and she mentioned something very interesting, which I don't know, maybe I saw it and I forget. There was this research by Anthropic, the company behind Claude, about when they, left the agents. Of course, not as a compliance perspective, but they started after a while to blackmail,
Mm.
people, so they don't shut them down. Now, I'm not like kind of fancy podcaster who's after, like these fancy things, but because I remember 2018, still there was no chat GPT, nothing. I was like following the trends, and what at that time DeepMind and the other companies were doing, and I said, okay, it looks like we're gonna go. I was working in sales, so it's like look like a robot gonna be selling to a robot. Now I'm gonna ask you here: are we going to see an AI agent doing compliance regulation and making sure that there's a data privacy on another AI agents? Like I know it's kind of a, again like loaded question, but love to hear your feedback on this.
I think we are going to see that, Mehmet, honestly. And I think that the question is going to be when. I think that there's going to be realignment of, which resources and which titles get kind of moved over to a more AI agentic model. And there's going to be creation of new roles, new titles that really humans will fill. And I think a number of them will be around kind of digital innovation for, the previous, team name that was, used for humans to be staffed up on. I think that's a really crazy world that we're headed towards. But I think that everything that I am seeing, everything that I am reading tells me that we are getting to it faster than I think most people necessarily appreciate.
Yeah, so as you said, like it's about when, not if it will happen. There's no doubt on this. You talked about, you know, the risks of, leaking data, and so
Mhm.
if I'm speaking to a compliance officer, right? So, or whoever your best persona would be in the enterprise, like I believe it's like IT governance or like sometimes the CISO also as well.
It's the
If
CISO.
I want to, yeah, so if I want to put this into the balance sheet of a company and to quantify, the risk of what I call it the data risk, right? Because it's like the most invisible liability. How that would on average, in your opinion, would turn in terms of money value?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're basically asking is like, how do we define and
Quantify,
the value, right,
right?
of GRC to a CISO? Is that right?
Right. Yes. Correct.
GRC agents, yeah. So there's three very specific levers that we use, at least when we talk about value delivery to a CISO. The first one is, and I'm sure, it's not a surprise to you, the first one is just simply time savings. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, GRC teams have strategic initiatives that they need to do, but their urgent manual work is the first 30 items in their to-do list. And it's always, everything else is always getting deprioritized because that first chunk of work is always increasing because it's so manual. And so the reality is that we tell CISOs like, look, you want your GRC team to focus on building a security compliance culture. You want, these things that humans do for humans, right? You can't have AI agents building a culture in your organization, that's for sure. Well, maybe one day, but not yet. And so if you can remove these tasks, the time that is saved is immeasurable. And you immediately see that time returned back to you for your strategic work that CISOs want to see get done. That's one. The second one is cost savings, and it's very tangibly related to things like reduction in external consultant spend, even reduction sometimes like legal spend from a compliance perspective, security compliance perspective, reduction in, of course, like, risk prevention, right? So there's sort of like those steps, and I have visibility. You don't have to spend as much money on certain measures you may have been putting in place before. And the last one, though, is risk visibility. And that's interestingly, it's the least quantitative and it's the most important. That's what CISOs, I would say, really, really want at the end of the day. These CISOs are going into the boardroom quarter after quarter and being asked to basically make a presentation on what are the biggest risks to the business. Well, it is so hard to get a complete and accurate picture of risks to your business. It is harder to then quantify them. It is harder to then rank order them and say, look, these are the ones we should focus on. It is impossible to do all of those things without AI. How is it even, is not even capable of a GRC team, a human GRC team, to go and know every single risk that's happening in the business? They can't monitor controls all the time. Even if they can, all the control failings, everything that's happening needs to be risen at the right level, needs to be quantified. No human can do that. And so, what agents do is they create a picture, a complete and accurate picture of risk, and now the CISO is armed with the information that he or she needs to actually say, okay, then these are the most important risks. The CISO can use their judgment to decide, within these top 25, here are the 10 I'm going to float up. And now they have the confidence in the boardroom to say, these are the risks that I had. This is the picture that I've had, and this is what we should do next. And that is actually invaluable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's invaluable. Now, I'm going to ask you also something, Richa, because, when I went on the website, I've seen you cover large number of frameworks, and we know like these regulations also are evolving
Mhm.
globally, and you are a global company.
Yes.
So how are you seeing enterprises like, are they seeing it's challenging to keep updated with these multiple regulatory frameworks, especially sometime across different jurisdictions also as well? So I know for a fact I work with multinational companies also as well. So we have a data privacy law. Let's say we know the famous ones in the US usually. We have GDPR in Europe. Um, of course, you have like the additional ones like PCI DSS for financials and so on and so forth. So how do you help organizations in adopting and also at the same time keeping up to the latest of these different frameworks across different locations?
I think that's really a pain point that folks have felt for many years. I'm happy to say that it's implicitly solved in our platform and people don't need to worry about it so much anymore. So not only do we keep up with regulations, as they come up and add them to our platform, but if there's a new version of an existing regulation, we cross map from the previous version to the new version. And so it becomes a really seamless transition, which kind of goes back to what I was saying also about like cost saving as the second lever of value for the CISOs, because previously they have to maybe spend money on external consultants or lawyers sometimes, to kind of like understand and diagnose the difference between old version of a regulation and new version. And we just do that once for all of our clients at scale. So it's pretty easy and becomes kind of a foregone concern for our clients, which is great.
Absolutely. Now, I gotta ask you something more related to the company being a startup and building, in the space of compliance and cybersecurity. I know it for a fact it's not the easiest thing if you want to do. Like it's very hard.
Yeah.
What were like and congratulations by the way. You said like you started building in 2023, like just in 3 years time. Fantastic, milestones achieved and great results. I saw also like some of your customers you shared on your website. What were some of the unique challenges building in this space, especially it's a highly regulated market?
Patience. I think I think, it is really unusual for a startup to come out the gate targeting enterprises. A lot of
Right.
startups target, other startups or SMBs coming out the gate because it's a lot faster of a sales cycle. So you get revenue in the door quickly and you basically are able to build using that revenue, get, VC money and so on and so on. We were lucky that, from day one, the vision was enterprise GRC. It was never startup GRC. And, at the very beginning of the journey, I raised a pre-seed round, like before there was even a product. It was just me and my PowerPoint deck going around to investors. And most of them said, you shouldn't build your vision. You should build Vanta for Europe. That's what they said. Like you should build basically like a startup focused GRC company. I was like, absolutely not. That's not what I want to do. That's not what I'm interested in doing. There's a lot of people trying to copy Vanta, trying to build something else, trying to build something new, trying to build an AI powered enterprise GRC platform. And conviction, as a founder, you have to have unhinged conviction. I like to say you have to really, really believe that what you are, putting forward as your vision is correct. And then you have to actually build it. And the patience that it takes to build an enterprise product is not the same instant gratification of what it is to build a startup product. I know that. I know that. And in those first months, you really feel it. You want to bring in more clients for your team, for yourself, for your investors. Like you want that to work. But it takes some time. And I think patience is hard in those moments. But now it's really paid off. And I think the long arc rewards that patience. We now serve Fortune 500 companies and household names like Major League Soccer and Dropbox and CVS Health. And I think that's really amazing.
That's really amazing, and congratulations on that, Richa. It takes people, they see usually only the success, because I work with founders also as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And by the way, I've seen like recently, not long time ago, you raised a $20 million round also as well. So when invest okay, so let's the pre-seed round, I know how it felt, I've seen it, I know, like I know all the no's that you were getting.
So,
But
so
when
much
you
rejection.
when you start to show the tractions, Richa, so, and you start to talk to them, what signal convinced them that the company can become really a category leader, in your opinion?
In the pre-seed or in the Series A?
No, and the Series A.
The Series A. I think honestly, Mehmet, maybe the best part of the Series A story is that Google Ventures actually approached us. So they had actually done a review of the market because they wanted to make a bet in, enterprise GRC. And they actually came to us. So we didn't have to make a pitch or do a big, do kind of the typical VC roadshow. We got lucky to get such an amazing investor kind of knocking on our door. And why was that? It was, I think, two reasons. Like one is that they saw that we had AI agents actually out there live in use by enterprise companies. That's very rare. As I started this conversation, and I said, we started building agents in 2023. That means that we deployed our agents in 2023 and 2024. So we've had enterprise clients using agents for like almost 24 months now, our agents. And you can see their increase in usage. You can see the customer value. And it's hard to find other companies who have done that. And so that was one. And then the second piece is I think is that we have the most amazing team. I'm just one part of a big team that is amazing. Our CTO Hugo could not have had a better CTO. I could not have dreamed up a better CTO, to be honest. But he, the product that he has built and the consistency and the rigor and the stability and the security that he has built into the product is really second to none. And doing that alongside innovation, you know how hard of a task that is. And so the product really, really speaks for itself, in addition to the, of course, initial or, really great traction that we've been able to get.
Absolutely. It takes, it's a teamwork indeed. It's your vision also as founder. Um, and I've seen it, like when you are up to something that people really want, like I will tell people it looks easy, but it's not. You know, when we go and start to advise, startup founders, we tell them, yeah, you need to build something that people would pay for. It
Mhm.
looks easy on paper, but when you go and try to do it in practice, finding this product market fit and then have this, I would call it, the engine that start to push the company. You start to have the revenue, you start to have these large enterprises. So this is really something that takes a lot of time and effort and sleepless night. I'm sure you work more than maybe 18 hours a day at some stage, maybe. I'm just guessing. It's not easy. And again, congratulations on that. Now, if you want to look again to the market, do you see like other opportunities where the company compliance, you can also innovate in adjacent market to what you're currently offering?
These are great questions, Mehmet. You're getting to the heart of it, I think. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think right now we're really focused on expanding across our core modules. So, for example, we support clients with compliance or controls management, which includes audit prep, risk management, third-party risk management, policy management, and customer trust. And we have really like end-to-end automated with agentic the TPRM process, so third party risk. We are now working on controls and risk simultaneously and really creating an end to end stack of agents for those two. And then last but certainly not least will be policy and trust. And then I think we will start looking at adjacencies. And there's different ways to think about those adjacencies, but that's kind of where we are right now.
Cool. um do you see a lot of, yeah, because I'm seeing it in other domains. So
Mhm.
whenever a new company comes up and innovate, and create a new category similar to what you're doing, Richa. So we see the status quo, I call them, the incumbent. They try to just stuff thing and say, hey, like we have an AI thing now. Are you seeing this also in your domain as well?
Yes. The number of AI powered companies in our domain is so funny, in every domain. I think a lot of marketing teams are putting that on the website right now. Yeah. And it's interesting because, the difference between real AI native and AI chatbots or, add-on AI features is so immense in terms of the impact, but it's not always clear from a marketing perspective which is which. And it's really tough actually, and maybe I'll flip that around and ask you the question, Amit. Like when you think about, founders that you've interviewed and CEOs and CTOs who you've interviewed, um, the ones who are building great products and are able to actually message that, like that is actually the art and the science of the whole deal, right? And how have they kind of stood out and made sure that their customers know that they are actually the best product and competing with all of the marketing buzzwords from everybody else?
The best ones who I've seen doing it without mentioning sometimes AI. So they
Hmm.
bring the AI part just at the end.
Hmm.
They focus on the customer base, similar to what you were telling me. So because all the conversation, I see, Richa, you understand what you're doing, and I think this is your secret sauce. If you ask me, you know what are the customer pains, and this is why I tell everyone, whether they are startups or even like a business trying to sell their services, if you understand your customer pain, if you can, relate your offering to, this is why I asked you the question about the value, right? So whether it's like time saving, risk, actually, because people they forget, and you are in this business, so risk avoidance is actually a plus also as well, because company can lose money because someone would go and sue them for some data leakage that happened, right?
Yes.
And that, so you're saving them tons of money, which is not, of course, not something they can see potentially by counting it, but again, it enters into the ROI and so on. Or for example, maybe increasing revenue, increasing productivity, and you mentioned also about like how you can do things faster. So people who can talk and articulate these things, and at the end say, hey, and by the way, we do this by utilizing this cool technology called AI agents. So I've seen the people who are doing it this way are still doing better job than the just guys who go and say, hey, we have AI for this. Because you know I've been a customer. I've been also sitting on the startup seats also as well. And every time I figure out something, that stuffing, just technology terms doesn't change things much.
Hmm.
Yeah, the customer might ask this question, by the way, hey, what are you doing with AI? But it's just to see if you are following the trends. But if you go and back and go to basics, ask about their pain points, you don't need to do this. So absolutely. And one thing, I just need to clarify this. This is something, it's not like I discovered. This is something I learned. And, uh, people knows, my audience know, I'm very much, although like he wasn't in the B2B space, I'm into the B2B space. I'm very, inspired by Steve Jobs, because always I remember when he was telling, we should not be talking about bits and hertz, right? Like you talk about what value you add to customers. And I think this
Yeah.
is in business, it's pretty much the same. Now, if you want to look ahead, and I'm not asking you, Richard, because I know like in this age we cannot predict things on 5 and 10 years. But if you want to predict the trends in the coming, let's say 1 to 2 years in your space, what
Mhm.
are like the major breakthroughs, or like what do you think the market would look like 2 years from today?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that are going to change. I think one of them is that continuous compliance monitoring is going to become the norm. As I said before, I think some of the roadblocks that are stopping continuous compliance monitoring have to do with integrations and legacy stacks and siloed systems. And I think that AI actually helps us leapfrog some of those issues, some of those challenges. So I think that is a huge deal because continuous compliance monitoring will flag risks ahead of time. So risk visibility is about to increase significantly. With the increase in risk visibility, you'll basically actually see more of the problems. And that's a good thing because then you can actually address them before they're exploited. But I do think that it's going to create even more focus on GRC in the near to medium term. And then again, that's a great thing. But I see that I see that change happening. I see much more AI agents being put into place. There's that quote from Jensen Huang, which I'll probably butcher right now, but it's something along the lines of, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You might lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI. And that's kind of the idea that I think is going to happen. I think we're going to see a lot more GRC engineering happening. I think we're going to see a lot more really AI led GRC teams. And I think that means a rapid increase in the fluency of AI and agentic for these GRC teams, which I'm excited about. And I think, we're in a good position to help lead the charge on.
Absolutely. And s- I share with you, the same thoughts about, the future when it comes also to people who work in the domain. They should not be scared. Probably they need to learn new skills.
Mhm.
Uh, and to be honest, like I'm happy because, companies like yours, Richa, is trying to also change something which been kind of static for a long time. It was
Mhm.
just papers with check marks done, and actually it wasn't like someone who keeps monitoring, because I always do, like I do this every time I ask people, like, how do you make sure, like, for example, if you're not in front of your house door, how you make sure, like, how many people passed in front of the door? And this is why you
Yes.
put a camera. How this is why you put a camera, actually, right? So I tell them, like, if you do the thing one time and you think you're done, this is not the right way to do it. And this is where technology, like, let's think, how we can this make this automatic. When it comes to forms, and maybe I should have asked you this, like, you know, actually I asked you, but about the manual work. So I'm kind of still surprised that many companies still use paper,
Mm,
paper. Just they print papers to just do things, and then they scan, and then they do this. And I'm happy
yeah.
that AI now is disturbing this, right? So it's like we have this big change, and I think every board member is seeing this, and they are going and questioning actually their teams. Hey, are we still doing this? So I'm very happy that these things are moving this way, and like getting things done as it should be. Now, before we close and before we call it as end of the episode, this is something I ask all my guests. So Richa, is there anything you thought that I should have asked you and I didn't? And of course, where people can find out more and get in touch.
Thanks for asking, Mehmet. In terms of what else is to be asked, I mean, I think that maybe one last thing. I
Sure.
think that from our perspective, AI agents are only as good as the software that they actually live in. I do think that there is a moat. The world is not agentic only. The future is agentic, but the world is not going to be agentic only. We still need systems of record. We still need actual softwares. And I think the trick is going to be how well coordinated those agents and their softwares actually are. And so, as much as I love to talk about our AI agents, I will say that more than half of our engineering team focuses every single day on our core platform. And that's because I think long term, the platform is the moat, not the AI agents. I think everybody will have AI agents and we'll be able to build them ourselves. And it would be a free for all on that front. And what will be left? What will be left is the ability to actually put that data somewhere, do something with it, not only just get the insights out of it, but then show them, make it easy for humans to understand them. That is, I think, where we're headed. And so I just wanted to maybe close on that front and re-anchor ourselves on not only AI, but also platform. And of course, people can find us at compliance.com, spelled with a Y. So COMPLYANC.com, or you can literally write compliance with a Y.com, and that will also work. So yeah, that's us.
Richa, I'm happy you brought, about the mode. And 100% I agree with you here, because I'm keep repeating this in every episode. So LLMs kind of became commodity, right? Um, Everything we do is commodity. The thing that will stay, and this is because I'm happy you mentioned about the platform. So people were talking a couple of months and weeks back about, and we saw the stock market reacting, like the software companies stocks like fell down. And then people,
Yeah.
hey, calm down. It's not the way you think about it, because yeah, and building a platform, and this is why companies are gonna give examples not related to compliance, of course, and GRC. So if you look at companies like Salesforce, if you look at companies like ServiceNow, or like many other companies who started it in one vertical, one niche, but with time they build a platform, right?
Yes.
And then you hook multiple things in that platform. You have the data as mode also as well. Distribution becomes your mode, and then this is where it's gonna take long time till someone can go and copy, quote unquote, because people also they are thinking, oh, we have these vibe coding tools, and yeah, tomorrow I would just write a prompt and I will have a CRM. It's not as simple as you think, because you have product management, you have
Exactly.
like quality engineers, blah 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 blah, all the things. So I'm happy you brought this, Richa, here. And for the audience, the links that you mentioned, Richa, so they will be available in the show notes, so you don't have to look. Although like it's a very easy compliance with why, or if you write it the round way.com will work, but I'm gonna put still the links in the show notes. So thank you very much. I know how busy it can be for founders, and I appreciate you shared this time with me today and with the audience. I really appreciate it. And this is how I end my episodes. This is for the audience.
Thanks, Mehmet.
Classical, traditional thing. Yeah, thank you, Richa. So if you just guys found about the podcast, we're still in our growth phase, I would say. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did so, please give me a favor, subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keep coming again and again, I can't thank you enough. I'm repeating this 2025 and beginning 2026. uh, this cannot happen without someone comes and open their favorite podcasting app and listen to the podcast, or they open YouTube and they watch it. The podcast has been ranking in the Apple Top 200 charts in multiple countries since last year. But something special started to happen again in 2026. And I found out like we are now trending in multiple countries in different continents at the same time. Again, it's not something I push. This is because you come back and it looks like you're enjoying what I'm doing. So I'm very grateful for you. And as I say always, stay tuned for any episode very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.